destiny.
Okay, it's 5 minutes past 5 already. I think we've given enough room for members to join. I would like to welcome you all again. It's good to have you here on the fourth day. Again, congratulations for showing resilience and commitment to our Implementation Science webinar series. So we are on our fourth day, and today it's a continuation of Implementation Science methodologies. And today is going to be more about understanding stakeholder analysis and engagement. So today, again, we're going to be with our prestigious Professor Nathaniel Cirilli. So if there weren't any pending questions from yesterday, I'll then welcome you, Professor, to kickstart us with our today's session. You're very welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much, Naima. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the locality. Am I heard? Just to confirm.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Do you hear? Oh, thank you. Yeah, today is another day and perhaps a little bit shorter compared to yesterday. My role is to discuss with you stakeholders analysis and engagement. And I will continue using the same examples as for the cases used yesterday. So
I'm so sorry to
make
cut
it
you short, Professor.
You're welcome.
I'm so sorry. Yes, I just wanted to urge, perhaps if today's session is a little bit shorter, maybe if there are any pending questions from yesterday's session, maybe if you're willing to take a couple of questions before we start today's session.
It's fine. It's fine
Sorry?
if there is any.
Yes, there was a raised hand. Sure, there was a raised hand, but it was dropped. Yeah. So members, if there was any pending questions from yesterday's session, please, now is the time before we start today's session. I guess there is no any pending question, then we can proceed.
Okay. Yeah, of course, some of the questions, perhaps I will answer them as I go, because as I've said, this is a continuum of the session, which started yesterday. And specifically today, we are looking at the stakeholders analysis and engagement, but more so on analysis. The big question that you need to ask yourself is, who is a stakeholder? We use this term often in many things. Who is a stakeholder? But a stakeholder simply is a party who has interest or is affected. So interest in the sense that they may be willing, or is an individual or organization who may be willing to support or may oppose what you are doing. They just have interest, be it positive or negative. It's an interest. They have interest to see your project going down. They have interest to see your project moving up. They have whatever political or social or economical or community interest in whatever you are doing. It can be in the process or it can be in the outcome. For instance, if using an example of building a house, you may have stakeholders from the manufacturer of the materials to masonry, carpentry, and everyone. They are stakeholders. Some because they sell the products to you, but those who are also constructing roads are stakeholders to you, because you may be constructing your roads, your house in an area where the road will pass by. So all of these are stakeholders in a way. So a stakeholder is defined loosely as an individual or group who have interest, common interest. And the implementation science will focus much more as stakeholders who have interest in your project. either in its outcome or in its processes. So they can be international, mostly international considered as donor, especially when we're in LMIC, where we have been built with that mindset that donors must come from high-income countries. But again, they can be national, political, like legislators, governors, commissioners, depending on the locality you're coming from. Can also be from the public sector. This can be ministry, for instance, Ministry of Health. In Tanzania, for instance, also there is a Prime Minister's Office, Regional Administration, Local Government, and the Minister of Finance. Can be the Prime Minister's Office, Civil Servant and Good Governance. The multiple ministries come along when it comes to implementation science, especially in LMIC, where sometimes you may wonder that we have large number of ministries compared to high-income countries, who have even larger cabinets compared to high-income countries. Sometimes decentralization increases the size of the government, the comparable, even defeating the purpose of improving efficiency. But again, they can also be social security agencies, like these pension funds, workers' compensation funds, can be labor unions, professional associations, can be commercial, private for profit, non-for-profit, non-government organizations, foundations, can be civil society. But all in all, forget any other stakeholder, but not forget the users or users or consumers of your product or outcomes, because they are the key. These other stakeholders are important at different stages, but if there is no users, they become useless. Now, looking at the stakeholders analysis, there are different frameworks of analyzing stakeholders. Some analyze stakeholders from primary to tertiary or quaternary level in 4 levels, looking at the proximity to the effect, proximity to the outcome. Those who are very linked to the outcome are termed as primary. Those who follow come secondary. Those who follow after that come tertiary, and quaternary become the last group. But that is not very popular in implementation science, because in implementation science, we want the continuum of the strategies. So stakeholders analysis apply a different framework, which we'll see here. So the analysis as is an English language. It's like sorting, separating, prioritizing. You are looking at who matches what, who needs what. So we are identifying and prioritizing key stakeholders, assessing needs. We collect ideas from them and integrate into strategic management process. A key feature of stakeholder analysis is that it is a continuous process. It is never static. So you cannot say that I have finished analyzing the stakeholders for project A. You may start the project with certain stakeholders and end up the project while concluding the project with a totally different set of stakeholders. So, because interest may change, if the influence may change, for instance, the politicians, if you are a minister today, tomorrow you may not be, and people were following you when you were a minister. When you have left that position, you are nobody. For Christians, when Jesus went to Jerusalem with the donkey, he was received in celebrations and rejoicing. But there is this popular saying that after Jesus has dropped, the donkey went back. Nobody was even caring that the donkey was there. That also happened in our daily undertakings. In our daily undertaking, I have seen there is a hand. Maybe we can listen to that, Naima.
Thank you, Professor. We have a raised hand from Muhammad Mustafa. Please unmute your mic. Muhammad, if you have a question, please unmute your mic. I guess we can proceed. There was only one raised hand and we can't get through to him for now.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, we say, yeah, I was giving an example of the donkey there. When the donkey came back, nobody was hearing. So even you, with the place where you are working, some people may be respecting you, maybe coming, praising you, you're a very good person, because you hold a certain position which they have interest. Once you leave that position and you're nobody, the same people will go to that other person who is holding that position. And they will just see you as a normal person. And some people tell you how you were bad when you're in that office. The very same people who used to praise you. So that's why stakeholder analysis become dynamic, because people change, priorities change, interest change, power change, your impact change, your influence change, everything change. Today I speak to you, you are listening because I'm on the position of a facilitator. So I have the power and position. But if I was not facilitating it, you may not come to listen to me. And if I'm in another position different from this, my influence over you changes completely. So stakeholders analysis normally is undertaken at the beginning of the project, but as I have repeatedly and strongly affirmed, it is a continuous and dynamic process. So it will continue as the projects evolve, because of the reasons I have just stated. The main aim of stakeholders analysis is to map out who hold the powers, because you want that person who have the key, who cares most, who needs to be brought on board. Who cares most means who has interest to what we are doing. In implementation science, stakeholders are part of intervention. They are not observers. They influence adoption, they influence delivery, they influence feasibility and sustainability. But again, their behaviors determines whether the intervention works in practice. They shape with the context, and so the stakeholders must be studied to gather their context in implementation science. So engagement is required, especially in these hybrid designs that I have shown you. Even in the stepwise design, they have already been engaged at the different stages of the hybrid. But now it needs coordination at all these stages to be able to analyze the outcomes. And without stakeholders, implementation designs collapse. Because the big question which you need to ask yourself is whose behavior should be changed, or who must change behavior for this intervention to work? At the group of the stakeholders, who you want most to change behavior so that the system can unfold. And that's why you put much the efforts. Tabani or Pio or Diambo, I see a hand. Naima, back to you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Taban, if you can unmute your mic. The mic is already enabled, so please just unmute your mic. Taban?
A type of thing.
If there's any challenges with unmuting your mic, please feel free to type in your question. So the process is when you have a question, you just raise your hand and your mic is enabled and you're free to unmute it and ask the question. I think we can proceed, Professor.
Thank you. Sorry for Taban and Muhammad, I think. But we will have some minutes at the end. Perhaps they will have time to ask their questions. So in implementation science, stakeholder analysis identify individuals and groups influence implementation, because remember, we're focusing on implementation. And here we want to understand their interest, power, and influence on interventions. And these are critical for adoption, fidelity, and sustainability of programs. As I have just said before, knowing the stakeholders who are the stakeholders, their interest, their influence and power, it helps you on how to engage them. You can put strategies at different stages of intervention. And this aim at preventing resistance and improves ownership. So they are essentially hybrid and stepwise science, because they support effective communication and coordination. As I have said, and I repeat this, and forget everything, but remember this, that stakeholder analysis is dynamic and evolves with the project. So this is a summary of a framework that is popularly used in stakeholder analysis, and the summary action that you should be able to consider. Chibahe, Wilson, there is a hand there, Naima.
Yes, Shibale, please unmute your mic. I cannot unmute the mic from my side. I'm only able to enable it, and you unmute it from your end.
Hello, are you able to get me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to understand, looking at maybe the situation. I'll give an example like this health as maybe one of the stakeholders. I observe that in most governing systems, one would realize that there is some conflict of interest in terms of the political players, those that who are holding political positions, and the technocrats. How can this help to fill the gap when these two are trying maybe to offer maybe development ideas to the communities? Find that maybe one from the political side, maybe for example, the member of parliament will have more influence compared maybe to the council secretary or these other technocrats who are being employed by the government. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure if I got you clearly, but if I try to summarize your question, you want to understand how you handle a situation like when it happens that the political leader, the one who is elected, is in conflict with the technocrat at the council level or even at the ministry level. Is that summary correct?
Yes,
That's
please.
how
Thank
the
you.
question. Okay. Yeah, and that's where comes the critical part of this session, that you analyze your stakeholders before you start the project. So you don't introduce the project before you have known who is more powerful, who is more influential, who has the resources, who has what kind of power. That's why it's very important for this session. When you have identified them, you engage them right away from the beginning. that you introduce, you follow them, you tell them, you know, I want to bring here this kind of intervention, especially for the political leaders. You tell, you know, this will increase your number of votes, you know, people will vote you, especially when you are bringing this. We try to show the positive part on how it is, because for politicians, it's about the votes, nothing more. It's about the votes. Even if you give them money, if the money will take away their votes, they will not understand you. It's about votes. So you show them how the intervention or you're bringing will add to their votes, and their power of, or their influence will increase because of that. And in that event, you can make them become your speaker. You give them information, the correct information. You ensure they are the one who are speaking more to the community. I will give you an example, even of the village emergency care model and the bike model. We are not really speaking much at the primary healthcare, but it's the district officials who are speaking about it. But these are more or less the technocrat at the district level. But at the village and ward level, these are the councillors, the elected leaders, the village chairperson, the council are the one who speak to the community. They tell the community, this is very important to us. This is going to do this and this. When they understand it, they promote it to the community. If it is at the ministry level, is also to ensure that the minister understand. For instance, in another project that I'm involved with, is a major one, because it's for is a construction one, is bigger one. Is the regional commission and the region where are doing that project is the one who is speaking much about the project. So you ask him, do you have time? When he say yes, can you talk to the media about this project? When he say yes, you summarize what he should speak to the media and you give him. In an organization like where I'm working, you know, the vice chancellor is our top boss. You send information to him about, there is media one to come. He's not a politician, but by position, he's linked to politicians. He sometimes has to act as a politician. He said, okay, yes, I can talk to the media. Then you give him what to speak to the media. That's how we go. So you identify who is powerful, what role does that person has, and all those. Then you give them the right information, they speak. Yeah. So that's how we move. So I hope I have responded partly to your question. The critical step is to start your analysis ahead of time.
Thank you very
Have I
much,
responded?
Professor.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope
Yes,
so.
please. Thank you so much.
So we have about 3 questions in the chat box. So the first question is asked by Uthman Alao. He's asking, what is the importance of stakeholder matrix in stakeholder analysis?
Okay. Yeah, I think that one is funny. I'm just starting, so that will be responded as we move. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that
Then we
matrix is the one that is now being
it's right here,
summarized and
sure.
okay.
Yeah. The other question asked by Bikila says, at what stages of the process that we need to identify the stakeholders, and what practical steps should follow when identifying the stakeholders and stakeholder analysis?
I think, at what stage? That is the one I have just said. That is a continuous process. It is start ahead of time. Then you continue as you implement the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the question from Taban.
Of time.
Yeah, sure. The question from Taban asks, how often should stakeholder mapping or analysis be done, bearing in mind high influence and low power quadrant? Example, in the advent of social media influencers, community gatekeepers, we have those who in an instant can bring down a good research intervention with a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, that's a very critical question. I think that's the role of monitoring. When you are implementing any kind of project, be it small, be it large, monitoring should be continuously. You are looking at any changes that is coming. You're looking at any potential threat. You are looking at any potential impact that is coming to the project, and you assess it as it comes. So there is no clear answer as to when, how frequent. But you will ask how many, I'll tell you many. How frequent, I'll tell you frequent, because it depends on the situation. You handle situation by situation. For instance, for those who are not coming from Tanzania, we had our election in October 29th. And within 14 days, the president must appoint the cabinet. But early in January, I'm not sure if it's early in January, already the president has made some reshuffles in the cabinet. So in less than 2 months, you have reshuffle of the minister. When the minister has been reshuffled, and even the deputy minister, if we had already engaged with the minister who was there before, and you understood the interest, and you are giving the briefing every now and then, you need to prepare yourself again to brief this incoming minister. Because if he or she doesn't understand what you are doing, you may miss the government support. So it's about assessing the situation, being it political change, being it political fluidity, or being the community workers who have said in the community, new has come there, or he or she has received information that if he or she disperse their misinformation may distort the whole concept of intervention. So you keep your eyes on and you act timely. In engaging stakeholders, there is nothing like observe and wait. It's observe and act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think that was well addressed. Then we also have a question from Ojo Victor asking, how can stakeholder analysis be embedded as a routine implementation practice?
Okay. I don't have a direct answer to that as well, but I think it's a continued activity because you will continue engaging. You disseminate. You have two things normally when you engage. You are either disseminating findings for people to appreciate what you are doing, or you are continuing to disseminate knowledge about your intervention for more stakeholders to come. So it is actually part of your ongoing activities, especially for a project, because you need, like now it is more easier compared to the old days. Now you have a lot of social media. Like today I was in a meeting at one organization in Northern Tanzania and on Kafika, which is an organization that is dealing with the rehabilitation. While we were doing there, they had already taken photos of what we were meeting, and they have posted in social media already. By the time you realize, it is known, some people call you, oh, where are you? We see you in this meeting. So now that by itself is a kind of engagement. So there are a lot of engagement activities as you move. Some in terms of raising awareness of what you are doing, some in terms of trying to get buy-in, and some also in terms of advocating for resources. So it's a continuum. You cannot have a clear calendar for stakeholders engagement as a continuum, because the stakeholders do change, the interests change, the power change, the priorities change, and even the resources changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. We had a raised hand from Mengstu. Do you still have a question? If you do have a question, please unmute your mic. Mengstu. Thank you, Professor. I think we can proceed for now.
Asante. Okay. So this is the power influence grid matrix. As you have said, you are looking at who is more powerful, who is more interested, or who is more influential. So this is summarized in 4 quadrants. You have those with high power but low influence, you must ensure they are satisfied because they have high power. Even if they can't influence, they may use their power to say no. But groups like Ministry of Health, especially for health interventions, these are high powerful and high influential. These you must manage closely, not only to be satisfied. You must address all the issues. But for those who are like community members, it's unfortunate because these are the beneficiaries. They have low influence, low power. These you just monitor. They will just follow. They're like trailers in the car. If the engine moves, the trailer will follow. But again, you have those who have low power, but they have high influence. People like councillors, politicians, many of politicians come here, especially at the lower levels. They have high influence, but they have low power. So what they can do, they cannot stop you from doing, but they can corrupt your project by telling, by dispersing false information or influencing other people who are powerful to collapse your intervention. So in other words, the high power, including people like Minister of Health, councils, district leadership, these are high powerful and high influential. So you must manage them closely. When you have those who are high power but low influence, you ensure that they are satisfied. These are regional authorities, and to your surprise, funders are high powerful, but they are not influential. They are not influential. So they have power because they can just decide that you're not going anywhere. So these you must satisfy. That's why when we prepare reports for project, we must ensure that the project satisfies the funder. But you have our high influence. You have high, these are the people in the community. People like community healthcare workers, the politicians at the lower levels. They don't have power, but they are influential. Keep them informed. Involve them. Bwana Diwani, please, this is the information. There is this and this and this. You take them for lunch, you take them, they feel they're highly valued. Then we are the one who are implementing the project there. When they speak to the community, this project is very nice. We are doing this and this. Yeah, but that's, I'm not saying you are becoming corny, but you're not conning them or tricking them, but that is the reality of the world. But you have those who are low power, low influence, the general public. Just monitor them because they have nothing to do. They will follow eventually. So why do we use power influence grid matrix for stakeholders mapping? One, it helps us to prioritize engagement and communication. And again, it is useful in planning the hybrid design stakeholders engagement. It is critical in coordinating. Remember, for Stepway, I've said you need coordination because they are already engaged, because you want to roll out. And again, it improves efficiency in stakeholders management. So back into our example of the projects. For hybrid and stepway designs, in hybrid type 1, where we use VEC in Bantu, here, when you are engaging people like staff and community, you want to learn how the model works. You must engage them to learn how the model works, because these are the key. These are the primary here. But when you come to hybrid type 2, your stakeholders are community health workers and healers to co-create and adopt the system. You want the system to be adopted. So these are the primary. I'm not saying they are only stakeholders, but I've just teased out some few examples for the purpose of the session. But in hybrid type 3, the professional councils and the Ministry of Health are key for institutionalize the framework. For the scale-up of the VEC district, apart from where it is implemented, adopt intervention in phases. So the district authority are key in that one. So the stakeholder mapping aim to answer who determines adoption at this stage. especially at the bank. So again, as I've said, stakeholders changes and design changes. So the VEC, for instance, you have high powerful and high influential at the district level, Minister of Health, PRH, during scale up. These are the influential. But again, you have high power, low influence, regional authorities and referral hospitals when you're implementing in those places, already it has been accepted. But you have low power, high influence when you are talking of primary healthcare facility and community members in the band. They have low power, but they have high influence of intervention failing or working. Low power, low influence, these are the general community during early pilot in battle. They have nothing. They will follow what their political leaders will say. So the hybrid stage relies more on local influencers. So the bottom line, where you implement intervention in hybrid designs for implementation science, is influenced more by the people in where you are implementing, or we can say the context realities. In stepwise, it relies more on systems. Remember, in stepwise is scaling up, so it's about systems of authorities. And as I have said, the stakeholder roles shift as VEC matures. In the adoption, in the introduction, adoption, and scaling up, and institutionalization. So power influence greedy explains stakeholders' engagement strategy at this level. Looking at the that is snake bite envenoming, high power, high influence, you have the district health teams and facility in charges. High power, low influence, here you have funders and regional supervisors. Low power, high influence, come back to community health workers, traditional healers, and community members. Remember, low power, they cannot stop you, but they can ensure that you are not succeeding by influencing other people to stop you who are powerful. So adoption, low power, low influence is normally the wider public in all interventions. The wider public is low power, low influence. So adoption normally depends on low power, high influence actors. Low power, high influence actors. These, the second layer close to the community. The community health workers, traditional healers, who are key in implementing the intervention. Coordination depends on high power actors. Those who have high power, they can say, okay, coordinate this, it will remove this, or say, stop this, and it dies. So the grid, the matrix, as one asked about, the stakeholders matrix, helps in prioritizing engagement in hybrid tech too. It's about prioritization of engagement. So stakeholders generate both data and implementation success. In CPD, stakeholders at the policy and regulatory level, high power, high influence, professional council and the Minister of Health, because it is their thing. High power, but low influence at training institutions and the accreditation bodies. If they don't prepare the CPD activities, if they don't accredit the CPD activities, it is done. They cannot influence because they are behind. They are mostly technocrats. Most of the time, technocrats are the powerful, but they have no influence. So they can just sabotage you, or by telling you, come tomorrow, this cannot work. They are done. They are technocrats. But low power, high influence, these are healthy professionals as end users. If they don't adopt it, it becomes a serious crisis. Low power, low influence, general public, they are not even interested with your CPD. They want quality care, not CPDs. So institutionalization depends on the regulatory authorities, which are the high power, high influence. Adoption depends on professional participation, which we have said are low power, high influence, because they are the professions. If they are not participating, it will not be adopted. So grids guide engagement for hybrid type 3. So stakeholder influence determines sustainability. If the stakeholders cannot influence its adoption, it will not be sustainable. Now, how stakeholders affect implementation outcomes? Adoption, in most cases we have seen, is driven by low power, high influence actors. These are the ones who are the frontliners in most cases. They adopt the intervention because they're interested in it. They are not part, but they have influence. They tell this intervention not to work. This intervention bring more works, doesn't bring money, doesn't bring whatever. Acceptability is shaped by communities and end users. Those who have low power have low influence. If they accept it, then no resistance. Visibility is influenced by facilities and logistical teams, which partly form part of the high power, high influence, high power, low influence, and low power, high influence. Fidelity is ensured by trainers and supervisors. And these trainers and supervisors, these are mostly the technocrats, if it's the CPD. But for interventions like SBE and VEC, these are the frontliners at the facilities. Penetration depends on district and regional leadership. Here you come at high power, high influence at the district level. And sustainability depends on the Minister of Health and Councils, high power, high influence. So each construct aligns with the power influence position, and the grids help predict implementation success. So you must really analyze your stakeholders critically and carefully, because it is after knowing who is doing what, you can engage that stakeholder. So why stakeholder analysis is critical in the hybrid designs? Remember, we study both outcomes and behaviors of stakeholders when we're implementing the intervention. So it is, we will reveal barriers and facilitators. But as you have just said, the stakeholders influence fidelity. The stakeholder explain contextual differences. And in this case, qualitative methods will help to understand the stakeholders. And it is critical because co-creation, like in SB and VEC, is much influenced by the stakeholders. But again, engagement for CPD require critical understanding of the stakeholders for adoption and the institutionalization. So as I've said, for the hybrid, you are focusing on stakeholders engagement. For the wedge, you are focusing on stakeholders coordination. And the reason is because you have many sites involved over time. So it requires districts and regional coordination. It requires aligned training schedules to ensure that it is scaled up the same way as it has been done in the previous site. Remember, this was a control by that time. It requires resource planning. It requires monitoring across sites. And it requires communication across phases. And it requires leadership support. So, if I'm to summarize again what I was saying, the stakeholders management in implementation science and the engagement. In early stage, you engage for learning, hybrid type 1. In middle stage, you engage for co-creation. You want them to be part of the intervention. That's habitat 2. In scale-up stage, you engage for coordination. In step which, in institutionalization, you engage for governance. That is habitat 3. So continuous feedback improves implementation, and always treat your stakeholders as participants, not as partners, not as participants who just come and listen. But they are partners who need to get the right information, and you can also assign them tasks to go here and there. And if you have some resources, sometimes you appreciate by carrying meeting where you can even pay them allowances so that they feel respected and part of the intervention. So the key take-home messages is 1, stakeholders are engine of adoption and scale. VEC shows stakeholders enable learning and scaling. SB shows stakeholders co-create the system. CPD shows that stakeholders institutionalize the system. And the hybrid design study stakeholders' behavior, while StakeWedge organize stakeholders' coordination. So, if I leave you with a reflection, reflect now back on the project or intervention you know in your place, in your jurisdiction, and use the power influence grid matrix, analyze the critical stakeholders for implementation science in that project. Now I'm open for the questions, but I assume this is my last slide.
Thank you very much, Professor, for this wonderful session. I believe it's more of a continuation of what we have been learning, and it's helping us contemplate more. So we have like 2-3 more questions. The first question is from Akinlami, and they ask, when performing stakeholder analysis for a large-scale health intervention, how do you effectively weigh the influence of informal power brokers, those who may not have an official title but hold the keys to community trust, against the formal institutional stakeholders who provide the funding and legal mandates? When performing stakeholder analysis for a large-scale health intervention.
Maybe I should stop sharing my screen so that you can share that screen.
Okay. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, at least I can see. Okay.
Yes, so that was the first question. Okay.
I can read it for myself to allow you to take some sip of water.
Sure, thanks.
So, when performing stakeholder analysis for a large-scale health intervention, how do you effectively weigh the influence of informal power brokers, those who may not have an official title but hold the keys to community trust, against the formal institutional stakeholders who provide the funding and legal mandates? Oh, yes, this is critical. And the middlemen, these are very challenging. Yeah, I think I don't have a straight answer to this, but informal any official title, but they're informal. They can tell you, I can help you see the minister, and they can make it happen. So you move into that informal way. And normally in policy, we say it is not the good evidence you brought in the office that changes the policy. It is a bottle of beer or a cup of coffee or a cup of tea that was taken over the weekend at the bar that changes everything. In the office, you are just ratifying. So it is important to understand this kind by asking asking about who knows what in the community. You look at those using the community and informal network. When you have identified them, you also try to reach them, and you speak to them about specifically what you want from those keys of the office. And if you realize they have a contribution, put them on board. Define an informal role that even if it was not in the project, but it will help you to ensure that you reach where you want to go. Another question was, are there situations whereby you may get a negative stakeholder response due to their personal interest, and how can you overcome this pressure to keep achieving a goal? Oh yes, this is very common. Expecting many negative responses if you have not yet received them, especially when you are working in a multi-billion project and they think that you earn money, they don't get money. They will discourage you, give you negative responses. But what you need is to continue engaging, engage every other person that's surrounding that person to ensure that the correct information reaches that person, and they understand that is the benefit for the benefit is for the wider betterment of the community. It's not just individual goals. I would like to know if it's compulsory in prioritizing stakeholders in some cases. Yes, but all cases, not in some. It is compulsory because the resources are scarce. So you must prioritize who to engage and how to engage and at what scale. Yeah, because some of them is important to know. Some of them is they must know. And some of them, they must participate. So you can categorize who should be involved, who should be aware, and who should be informed. How do you manage stakeholders who have little influence but high power in situations where they want to take charge? Yeah, a powerful stakeholder is always powerful. Remember, we said keep them satisfied. If they have high power but they have low influence, you must satisfy them. Is a delicate line. That's where politics comes in, because they want to take charge, but they're just stakeholders. So you look at what you give them. You can give them hypothetical charge, hypothetical power. That, okay, like in the meeting, you bring him to the meeting, you invite him to the meeting, you have every agenda prepared, you ask him or her to chair the meeting, but because he's not much informed about your project, will definitely come back for everything to ask you. So you are leading from the shadow. Learn how to lead from the shadow. It's not necessary that every time you'll be front, but eventually many people will know who is leading the organization or the project, if at all you want that. Yeah, but sometimes focus on the results. And how best can we integrate stakeholders' engagement in the co-creation process? There is no best way, but as I've said, engagement is continuous. So start from the very beginning, tell them what you will do, prepare them for co-creation, train them, because when you come for co-creation, and if it's a technical thing, you must train them. So it should be a continuous process, back and forth, to ensure that everything come together as smooth. I need to know in hybrid effectiveness implementation trials, how should we prioritize outcomes when the effectiveness and implementation metrics point in different directions? Okay. Then if you have an intervention where effectiveness metrics and implementation metrics are in different directions, you need to realign. Because effectiveness, remember in implementation science, I said this yesterday, we are not interested in just outcomes. We're also interested in process. When you're speaking of effectiveness, you're speaking of outcomes, preliminary outcomes. And the implementation, this is the fidelity which you want. So they must be aligned. You need to revisit what goes wrong. Because the outcomes cannot be in south and implementation is going to the north. That is that's where you need a close monitoring and of assessing. Either you defined your indicators wrongly in the beginning, or you have collected wrongly the data to measure the metrics. Provided you have the right metrics, both the effectiveness and the implementation should point in the same direction. If it points on different directions, that means things are not in order. The corrective affirmative actions are needed. Again, can you advise how best one manage stakeholders who are difficult, corrupt, and demand perhaps to open the gates for project implementation? Yeah, these are always there, and this is human behavior. That's why implementation science comes in. This is human behavior. When you are looking at the result, someone else is looking at consuming the resources that can bring the result. That is everywhere. And that's why corruption is everywhere and is among the findable problems. One major thing you can address this is to exercise high level of transparency in the project, that everyone in the project knows what is being done. When you have exercised a high level of transparency, it's very hard to have someone corrupt while everyone knows what exactly is to be done, including financial, especially in an organization. One important thing you need to know, those resources are not yours. They are for the organization and for the project. So put everything open. If you hide things, you don't put things in an open environment, that means you or yourself, you are having a hidden agenda. You may be corrupt as well. So be transparent as much as you can. You will get political pressure by being transparent in resources because they want to come to get the resources, but act in a transparent manner because the procedures and the protocols will guide you. Thank you. I think I've responded to all the 7 questions. If there is more questions.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think all questions that have been asked through the chat box have been addressed. If there is any participant that has any pending question and you'd like to ask it, please feel free to raise your hand. Or if you're not comfortable, if you'd like to chat, to write it in the chat box, please do so now so that we can address all pending questions as we digest today's session. I guess the session was very well understood, and I believe everyone has had a better understanding when it comes to stakeholders' engagement in implementation science. I believe we all have a better understanding now and are still digesting more of how that can apply in our daily settings. We have an additional question asking, do you think that implementation science can be used within quality improvement?
Yes, I think we have spoken that since yesterday because implementation science aim at improving quality and adoption. So you look at not what is the quality, but how to ensure quality. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think that concludes the end of our today's session. Considering we do not have any more questions, that means we're going to finish ahead of time. Professor, we would really like to extend our gratitude for your willingness to share this knowledge, to help disseminate such important information to a number of participants that are here with us today. We're really grateful for that, and we look forward to having more of these sessions. We look forward to gaining more knowledge from you as well. So on behalf of Marquis College, we are really grateful and we're really thankful for this. For participants, we are also very thankful for your commitment, your resilience to participate in these sessions until today, which is the 4th day. And we're left with one session, which will be held tomorrow. And that is going to conclude our first series of webinars. And this was more about implementation science. So I would really like to thank you all, Professor. We're really grateful and we thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I thank the participant for their active engagement, for asking questions. I have really enjoyed to be part of facilitating this course. And thank you very much. I wish you all the very best luck in applying the concept and principles you have learned.
Thank you very much, Professor, and please allow us to always reach out if you have more questions with regard to the sessions that we've had. And I'm going to also share Professor's LinkedIn profile as well as his ResearchGate profile so that you can be able to see his publications that are relevant to implementation science, and we can learn more about the work that he has done. So thank you very much all, and I wish you the beginning or start of your day.
Make-A-Wish is the place for destiny.